YouTube, welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. I'm very excited to be making this video. I've been wanting to do this one for so long because I find this club particularly very interesting, the history of. It's the history of Grimsby Town, which, if you know anything about Grimsby Town, you know they've been on a pretty big roller coaster. They've been in highs of Division 1 for quite a long time, and very early days of the Football League, to being in non-league very recently, and they've fluctuated all over the league all the way throughout their history. And they're probably underachieving basing on their current position, but it is what it is. But we'll turn back the clock to 1878, when they were formed, after a meeting was held at the Wellington Arms public house in Freeman Street in Grimsby. Several attendees included members of a local Worsley cricket club, who wanted to form a football club to occupy the empty winter evenings after the cricket season had finished, as was commonplace with a lot of clubs in England at the time. The club was originally called Grimsby Pelham, this being the family name of the Earl of Yarborough. He was a significant landowner in the area, and in 1880 the club purchased land at Clee Park, which was to become their home ground until 1889. They then relocated to Abbey Park before moving again in 1899 to their present home of Blundell Park. Great stadium. The original colours were blue and white hoops, which were changed to chocolate brown and blue quartered shirts in 1884. That sounds like an awful kit. In 1888, the club first played football, or league football, as it is, joining the newly formed combination. And the league, though, soon did collapse, and following that, in the next year, they applied to join the Football League. But this application was refused, and so they joined the Football Alliance. In 1890, the club became a limited company, and in 1892, they finally entered the Football League, when it was expanded to 2 divisions. The first game was a 2-1 victory over Norwich Victoria in the Football League. The 1901-02 season saw promotion to the First Division, having finished as champions. 2 seasons later, though, they were relegated, and within a decade there would be a non-league side again, failing re-election in 1910 and falling to the Midland League. However, they finished as champions at the first attempt, and at the subsequent re-election vote they replaced local rivals Lincoln City in the Football League. Grimsby Town and Hull City were the only 2 professional teams which had official permission to play league football on Christmas Day because of the demands of the fish trade. But that tradition has now disappeared following a dramatic reduction of their trawler fleets in recent years, unfortunately. This was, though, the most successful period in the club's history, and the first full season after World War I, the club were relegated to the new 3rd Division. In the initial 1920-21 season, they played against former members of the Southern League who had been invited to form a new division. They were the only ones from Northern England. But after a year, the equivalent division, the 3rd Division North, was created, and Grimsby moved across to that. Saves much travelling, I suppose. By 1929, they were back in Division 1, though, and there they stayed, with a brief break from 1932 to 1934 until 1939, and they obtained their highest ever league position of 5th in Division 1 in the 1934-35 season. In 1925, they adopted the black and white stripes as their colours. 3 Grimsby Town players of the forward of Jackie Bestel, goalkeeper George Tweedy, and defender Harry Betmead each received a solitary England cap during the period from 1935 to 1937. They remain the only players from the club to have received full England honours. Grimsby reached the semi-final of the FA Cup in 1936, and the game was played at Huddersfield Town's Leeds Road, but they lost 1-0 to Arsenal, with the goal coming from Cliff Bastin 5 minutes before half-time. On the 20th of February 1937, the club's record attendance of 31,651 was recorded when the club met Wolverhampton Wanderers in the FA Cup. Grimsby also reached the semi-final of the FA Cup on the 25th of March 1939. Grimsby played Wolverhampton Wanderers in an FA Cup semi-final at Old Trafford, and the attendance of 76,962 remains Old Trafford's largest ever attendance. The Mariners lost the game 5-0 after goalkeeper George Mawson was injured early in the match. With the rules forbidding substitutes for injuries, Grimsby had to play with 10 men and an outfield player in goal. With the resumption of the Football League for the 1946-47 season after World War II, the club was relegated at the end of the 1947-48 season and has never returned to the highest level since. Much of the 1950s and 1960s was spent alternating between the 2nd Division and the 3rd Division North, and that later became just the 3rd Division. From July 1951 to January 1953, they were managed by the legendary manager Bill Shankly, who was more well known for his time at Liverpool. His main problems were that Grimsby had been relegated twice in recent seasons and had dropped from the 1st to the 3rd Division, and some good players had been transferred before he arrived. Shankly, though, believed he still had good players to work with and was able to buy some additional players on the transfer market for low fees. Grimsby made a strong challenge for promotion in 1951-52, but they finished second, 3 points behind Lincoln City, with only one team being promoted from Division 3 North and the other one from Division 3 South. And Bill Shankly wrote in his autobiography in 1976, of pound for pound and class for class, the best football team I have seen in England since the war. In the league, they were played football nobody else could play. Everything was measured, planned and perfected, and you could not wish to see a more entertaining football. And considering he's writing that about Grimsby when he is managing Liverpool, I think at that time he's managing Liverpool, but I'm not entirely sure about when his exact start and end date was. That's pretty high praise indeed. Grimsby's aging team actually made a brilliant start in the 1952-53 season with 5 straight wins, but they eventually slipped and finished in 5th place. In 1953-54, Shankly became disillusioned with the board, who could not give him any money to buy new players. He was reluctant to promote some promising reserves because of the loyalty to the older players, a fault that was to resurface at Liverpool many years later, actually. And he finally resigned in January 1954, citing the board's lack of ambition as his main reason. Shankly's record in league football at Grimsby was 62 wins, 35 defeats from 118 matches. You make up the rest of draws. Shankly went on to win the Football League, the FA Cup and the UEFA Cup with Liverpool. Grimsby became the first English club to appoint a foreign manager, actually, with the appointment of Hungarian Elmer Berkesi, I want to say, in 1954. Shortly afterwards, Alan B. Chilton became Grimsby's first player manager. He joined late in 1954-55 season for Manchester United and was unable to stop them having to apply for re-election. But for the following season, under his management, they were champions of Division 3 North and the only club ever to go from a re-election from of the previous season to promotion in the next of only one season space. And Chilton continued as manager at Grimsby Town until April 1959, where he joined Wigan Athletic as manager for one season during the 1960-61 season. In 1968, Grimsby slipped into the 4th Division for the first time. The following season, the club had to apply for re-election to the league, having finished second from bottom. It was in this season that the lowest ever attendance for a Football League match at Blundell Park was recorded, of only 1,833 fans, seeing a 2-0 defeat to Brentford. Arthur Drury, a local businessman, married the daughter of Grimsby Town's chairman, and subsequently served as director of the club before his own chairmanship. Drury became president of the Football League and chairman of the Football Association after Grimsby, before he was elected as the 5th president of FIFA. Grimsby Town broke the transfer record in 1972 with a fee of £20,000 for the signing of Phil Hubbard. In the same year, 22,489 people witnessed a home victory against Exeter City that saw the club promoted as Division 4 champions. This turnaround was credited to the appointment of Laurie McMenemy as manager. The club stayed in Division 3 until relegation in 1977, but they were promoted again in 1979. A year later, they finished as 3rd Division champions under the stewardship of George Kerr, and returned to the second tier of the English game, a level that had not been at for 16 years. A popular myth has it that in 1976, the local Member of Parliament and then Foreign Secretary Anthony Crosland, you may have heard of him, invited the then United States Secretary of State Henry Kissinger to watch the Mariners play Gillingham. Despite this being widely reported in the media, with some outlets claiming Kissinger subsequently became a Grimsby fan, in reality, Kissinger's Boeing 747 simply stopped off for a 2-hour breakfast discussion with Crosland on the issue of Rhodesia at the nearby RAF Waddington before flying directly to Nairobi. So, didn't attend a Mariners game at all. However, Crosland's decision forced the US foreign policy leader to fly from London to Lincolnshire for their Saturday morning meeting was influenced by his desire to stay in his constituency and watch his local football team. So, a bit of a link. The first season back of the 1980-81 season, in the second tier that is, saw the club finish 7th. Work started that year on a new £1 million stand, originally called the Findus stand, now known as the Young stand, after the former Barrett stand had been declared unsafe. The stand opened for the first time on the 29th of August 1982, as the Mariners played host to Leeds United. In the 1983-84 season, the club finished 5th in the second division after spending most of the latter part of the campaign in the top 3 promotion places. This was their highest ever league finish since the 1947-48 season. But Grimsby Town's stay in the second division ended in 1987, having spent much of the 1986-87 season in the top half of the table. But a run of 8 losses and 2 draws in the final 10 games saw them fall from 8th to 21st. 1987-88 saw Grimsby Town suffer a second consecutive relegation, placing them in the 4th division. The club's financial situation was also dismal, and as of the 1988-89 season began, the task at Grimsby was to avoid relegation to the Football Conference and avoid expulsion full stop from the FA, and therefore avoid going out of business completely. This was actually achieved, and they finished 9th. But following the resignation of Dave Booth in 1986, that was to actually pursue outside business interests, nothing to do with football. The club had 2 managers in 2 years, of Mick Lyons and Bobby Roberts. Alan Buckley was appointed after the 1988 relegation, and by 1991 he had led the club to 2 successive promotions with the chairman at that time, being Peter Furneaux. Grimsby were to remain in football's second flight for 6 years. Buckley's crop of players consisted of some of the most popular and biggest cult heroes in the club's history. Players such as Sean Cunnington, Keith Alexander, Mark Lever, Dave Gilbert, Steve Livingston, Paul Futcher, Paul Groves, and Clive Mendonca made the club a solid second-tier side. The second division actually became Division 1 in 1992 upon the creation of the Football League from the creation of the Premier League from the old First Division. In 1992-93, Grimsby finished 9th in the new Division 1, and until well into April they had been in a hunt for a playoff place that would have given them a chance of a 3rd promotion in 4 years. They dipped to 16th place a year later, though they were never in any real danger of relegation. The Mariners began to produce homegrown talent from the club's youth academy, including Jack Lester, John Oster, Gary Croft, and Peter Handyside. Buckley departed Grimsby in October 1994 to join West Bromwich Albion, and he was replaced by defender Brian Laws. Those steered Grimsby to a 10th place finish in his first season as manager. During his tenure, Lord became famous for a changing room altercation after a defeat at Luton with the Italian striker Ivano Bonetti, which left the latter with a fractured cheekbone and caused the popular player to leave the club at the end of the season. Grimsby finished 17th and were in a battle to avoid relegation right up to the penultimate game of the season. In the 1996-97 season, the Mariners were relegated from Division 1. Despite flowing goals from Clive Mendonca, notably good performances from John Oster and newcomer Kingsley Black, Grimsby failed to save themselves. The club had suffered from the losses of Gary Croft, who made a £1.7 million move to Blackburn Rovers, and the loss of the ever-present goalkeeper Paul Crichton. The 1997-98 season saw the return of Alan Buckley as manager, and that was after an unsuccessful period at West Bromwich Albion. For Grimsby Town's most successful post-war season, and in the summer of 1997, Buckley succeeded in bringing players to the club who were to be instrumental in the club's upcoming season. Former skipper Paul Groves was re-signed from West Bromwich Albion, and Kevin Donovan and David Smith also joined the club from Albion. The mid-season capture of Huddersfield Town midfielder Wayne Burnett proved to be a great bit of business for Buckley. After a seemingly poor start to the league campaign, performances improved, which propelled the club into a promotion battle with Watford, Bristol City, and an expensively assembled Fulham. At the time, the only club at this level to have spent seven-figure sums on players, with Grimsby finishing the season in third place. A good run in the League Cup saw the Mariners knock out the holders Leicester City and fellow Premier League side Sheffield Wednesday out of competition before finally losing out to Liverpool. A decent run of form had ignited the careers of such young players as Darrell Clare, Danny Butterfield, and Jack Lester, who were becoming an integral part of the Blundell Park setup. The Mariners went on to dump Burnley out of the Football League Trophy Northern Section area final, which would see the club book its first trip to Wembley Stadium. The club were drawn against Southern Section champions AFC Bournemouth, and in a tight game, an equaliser from substitute Kingsley Black took the game into extra time. And in the 112th minute, Grimsby secured the game, courtesy of a golden goal from Wayne Burnett. This was the first major trophy awarded to the club following its first appearance at Wembley. It took only 4 weeks for Grimsby to return to the stadium, though, this time to face Northampton Town in the Division 2 playoff final. Town won the game at 1-0 thanks to the first half Kevin Donovan goal, which gave the club a historic Wembley double and the Mariners' promotion back to Division 1. The 1998-99 season saw Grimsby Town finish in 11th place, but the 1999-2000 season saw Grimsby struggle and finish 20th, avoiding relegation at the expense of Buckley's old club Walsall. The 2000-2001 season saw a boardroom change with Doug Everett taking over from Bill Carr. Everett dismissed manager Alan Buckley just 2 games into the season, replacing him with Lenny Lawrence, who earlier in his managerial career had guided both Charlton Athletic and Middlesbrough into the top flight. The new manager chopped and changed the playing squad around and brought in some expensive loan signings from abroad, such as Zhang Enhua, Menno Willems, signing from Vitesse for $160,000, David Nielsen and Nut Anders Fostervold. Despite this, the club struggled to avoid relegation, only securing their place in Division 1 on the last day of the season with a win over promoted Fulham. The Mariners started the 2001-2 season strongly, topping the league table after 5 games, and the club advanced to the third round of the League Cup, where they met holders Liverpool at Anfield. In one of the club's most famous victories, Grimsby held the Premier League team to a 0-0 draw after 90 minutes, taking the game into extra time. Despite Gary McAllister scoring a penalty following a David Beharrell handball to put the Reds 1-0 up, loan signing Marlon Brooms equalised before ex-Everton youth player Phil Jevons hit a 35-yard strike into the top corner of Chris Kirkland's goal to give the club a historic victory. Grimsby push for promotion faltered and the team's form declined rapidly, with Lawrence being dismissed halfway into the season. Paul Grove, the skipper, was chosen to replace him, and he steered them to a 19th place finish in the final table. Enough to avoid relegation, but a disappointing end to a season which had begun so promisingly. The season was overshadowed by loanee Martin Pringle's footballing career being ended after a leg-breaking tackle by Stockport County defender Dave Challoner. This was also aggravated more by the referee Mike Dean only awarding Challoner a yellow card for the horrific career-ending challenge. I mean, he's on a lot of clubs' hate list, isn't he, Mike Dean? But I imagine the Mariners no more so. As well as the collapse of ITV Digital actually put enormous strain on the finances for the club, as it did for almost all Football League clubs. The 2002-03 season would bring relegation, with the Mariners finishing bottom of Division 1, and were relegated after 5 successive seasons at this level. At the time, only one of their previous 12 seasons had been spent below the second tier of English football. The sudden collapse of ITV Digital had left the club with debts of over £2 million, £700,000 of which was owed to Inland Revenue, and a further substantial amount to their bankers Lloyds Bank. The collapse had seen a lot of smaller clubs playing in the second tier of English football struggle to make ends meet. Coupled with this, it meant first-team players such as Danny Queen and George Santos moving on to other clubs. For the new season, the club had to supply its own kits, following the closure of long-serving kit suppliers Avec Sportswear. Grimsby Town played the season using the brand Grimsby Town Sports. Groves was dismissed in February 2004 following a poor stretch of games that had seen the club drop down the table. His replacement, Nicky Law, was sacked himself only a few months later, as Grimsby were relegated for a second consecutive season. Russell Slade was appointed as the new manager in May 2004. In 2005, director John Fenty became a controlling shareholder in the club after a search for outside investors failed, and a sale of the shares to the local public was poorly received. He owned a 51% majority stake in the club and has made significant loans to the club to ensure its continued operation. Former Leicester City chairman John Elmsome also joined the board of directors, along with racehorse stable trainer and owner Michael Chapman in December 2002. Having guided Grimsby to a mid-table finish in his first season, Russell Slade began the 2005-06 season with a good start to the season, and much improved results and performances had seen Grimsby Town rise to the top of League 2. A good run in the League Cup saw Town beat Derby County away at Pride Park in round 1. That was a pretty embarrassing day, actually. And defeated Premier League side Tottenham Hotspur at home in the second round, with John Paul Kamidumba Kalala hitting an 87th minute winner. The Mariners eventually suffered elimination by Alan Shearer's Newcastle United in the third round, losing 1-0 at home. Grimsby would fall out of the promotion places on the final day of the season, and after defeating the playoff semi-finals, defeating Lincoln City in the playoff semi-finals, they would lose 1-0 to Cheltenham Town in the final at the Millennium Stadium. On the 31st of May, manager Russell Slade left the club after failing to agree terms on a new contract. Slade's assistant, Graham Roger, was his replacement, but by November he was dismissed following a poor start to the season. He was replaced by Alan Buckley, who arrived back with the Mariners for a third time, but could only produce a bottom half finish in League 2. During the 2007-08 season, the club enjoyed a good run in the Football League trophy, and on the 4th of March 2008, Grimsby booked their place at the new Wembley Stadium after beating Morecambe in a 2-leg Northern final. A Paul Bolland goal in the away leg, first leg that was enough to see Town through. They went on to play MK Dons in the final on the 30th of March, losing 2-0 after Danny Boschel missed an early penalty. The season ended with 8 straight defeats after 13-game winless streak in the league, stretching from 22nd of March 2008 on the 15th of September 2008. Alan Buckley was sacked as manager for a second time. The board appointed Mike Newell as manager. Mariners would finish 22nd in League Two, narrowly avoiding relegation on the final day. Following another slow start to the season, and despite previous backings from the Grimsby Town board, on the 18th of October 2009, the club's official website declared that they had sacked Mike Newell due to the irretrievable breakdown. Neil Woods was controversially made a permanent manager on the 23rd of November 2009, and the other main candidate for the job was former boss Russell Slade, but the board decided upon Woods ahead of Slade. Almost immediately, Woods was dealt a blow when the club decided to do a U-turn and sell captain Ryan Bennett to Peterborough United for £500,000, despite rejecting this offer in the summer and the player only recently signing a new 4-year deal. Grimsby under Woods struggled, and despite winning 4 and drawing 1 of their last 6 games to give them a chance of league survival going into the last game of the season, they were defeated 3-0 by Burton Albion, and thus were relegated from the Football League for the first time in nearly 100 years. Neil Woods was relieved of his duties on the 24th of February 2011 after 15 months in charge, leaving the club in 9th position in the Conference National. On the 23rd of March 2011, former Boston United managerial duo of Rob Scott and Paul Hurst was announced as the new joint managers. They finished the 2010-11 season in 11th on 62 points. On the 19th of September 2011, John Fenty resigned as chairman of Grimsby Town with immediate effect, a position he had held for 7 years, although he continues to act as director of the club. Following an 11th place finish in 2012, the Mariners enjoyed a positive cup run in the 2012-13 season, and the FA Trophy final they reached at Wembley Stadium, where they played Wrexham on the 24th of March 2013. Grimsby went ahead in the second half with 20 minutes left to go through an Andy Cook strike. However, they conceded a penalty with 9 minutes left, and Wrexham equalised. This took the game to extra time and then penalties, where Grimsby lost the shootout 4-1. Grimsby finished the season in good form with a 9-match unbeaten run, finishing the season with a 3-win against Newport County. This led them to a 4th place finish with 83 points, and they faced Newport County again straight away in the playoff semi-finals, where they were knocked out by a 1-0 loss in both legs. The managerial duo was broken up on the 6th of September 2013 due to Rob Scott being suspended, and Paul Hurst was placed in sole charge of the team. Grimsby came third in the Conference Premier 2014-15 season and secured a playoff spot. Grimsby reached the 2015 Conference Premier League playoff final against Bristol Rovers in front of a conference record for 47,029 crowd at Wembley Stadium. The game was forced to penalties, where John Paul Pittman missed the penultimate penalty in their 5-3 shootout. Grimsby's highest attendance in the 2015-16 season was in the 2-0 victory over local rivals Lincoln City, a gate of 7,650, which also saw the highest attendance of all the clubs in the 2015-16 season. Grimsby would play in the final of the FA Trophy, but they lost, and the result was 1-0 to Halifax Town. The week before, Grimsby Town beat Forest Green Rovers 3-1 in the 2016 National League player final at Wembley, seeing Grimsby promoted back to League Two after a 6-year absence from the Football League. After promotion, manager Paul Hurst released a number of players, many of whom were pivotal to the previous season's promotion push. On the 24th of October 2016, Paul Hurst was appointed as Shrewsbury Town manager. Chris Doig also left Grimsby and made Hurst's assistant at Shrewsbury, thus leaving Dave Moore and Stuart Watkiss as caretaker managers. On the 7th of November 2016, Marcus Bignott, then manager of non-league side Solihull Moors, was officially announced as the new Grimsby Town manager, along with the appointment of Mickey Moore as his assistant. During the January transfer window, Bignot brought in a total of 6 players permanently, including Solihull Moors midfielder Johnny Osborne and Gateshead midfielder Sam Jones. Omar Bogle, Grimsby Town's top scorer at that point in the season, left the club for Wigan Athletic. On the 10th of April 2017, Marcus Bignot was relieved of his duties from the club. His replacement was Russell Slade, who joined the club for a second time as manager on the 12th of April 2017. Slade's assistant was former Grimsby player Paul Wilkinson. The Mariners would finish 14th with a total of 62 points. Slade was sacked though on the 11th of February 2018 after seeing the team fail to win in 12 league games, with 8 losses. He left the team as 17th in League 2. Paul Wilkinson took over as caretaker manager that is, following the sacking. And during this time, Grimsby faced further defeats against Cambridge United and Exeter City. Michael Jolly was appointed as the new manager on the 2nd of March 2018, and twice secured Grimsby's Football League status, as well as securing cup runs that culminated in an FA Cup tie away at Crystal Palace and a League Cup tie at Chelsea. Jolly left the club by mutual agreement and was replaced on a temporary basis by assistant manager Anthony Limbrick. On the 29th of December 2019, Ian Holloway joined Grimsby Town as manager, at the same time becoming a share owner in the club. On the 23rd of December 2020, just under 1 year later, Holloway left the club abruptly in controversial circumstances by announcing on Twitter that he was to resign with immediate effect. His decision was down to several boardroom issues, a big loss in form and his unwillingness to work with a consortium looking to buy out John Fentley, which left Ben Davis as caretaker manager for 2 games. On the 30th of December 2020, Paul Hurst was reappointed as permanent manager. However, he could not prevent the club from being relegated back to the National League following a 3-2 defeat to Exeter, which confirmed their return after a 5-year stay back in the Football League. On the 5th of May 2021, local businessmen Jason Stockwood and Andrew Petit, under their company 1878 Partners, completed their takeover of the football club after buying out the majority shareholder from John Fenty. In the 2021-2022 season, they finished 6th in the National League. They defeated Notts County in the quarter-finals of the playoffs and Wrexham in the semi-finals before defeating Solihull Moors by 2-1 after extra time to win promotion to the EFL League 2 on the 5th of June 2022 at the London Stadium. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you're new around here. I know it's incredibly dark. I probably should have turned a light on. But please subscribe if you're new around here. I'm going to be doing the best championship transfers coming up on Friday, and the history of your club of Harrogate Town, another interesting one. But goodbye for now.